What happens when the world's most powerful country starts running out of something it cannot live without? And the only place left to turn is its closest ally. For years, that was a strategic question, something debated in policy circles. But in September of 2024, it became something else. That's when Donald Trump looked at British Columbia and didn't see a province. He saw, in his words, a very large faucet that could be turned on to solve the problems in Los Angeles. This single comment isn't the story, it's a symptom. And to understand what's coming, you need the framework to see the patterns they see. Because to grasp the force that wants to turn that handle, we first have to understand the desperation that is building behind it. We have to look south. That desperation is not abstract. It has a physical reality. To understand it, you have to look past the political noise and see the landscape itself. See the American West not as a postcard, but as a system under a level of strain it has not seen in over 1,000 years. What's happening there isn't just a drought. Scientists have a more precise, more chilling name for it. A mega-drought. The driest period in the last 12 centuries. This isn't a weather pattern, it's a climate shift, and its front line is the Colorado River, the lifeblood for 40 million people. For years, we've heard the warnings. But now you can see the proof etched into the earth. Go to Lake Mead or Lake Powell. You'll see the bathtub rings, the pale chalky scars on the canyon walls showing just how far the water has fallen. By early 2026, projections showed Lake Mead at just over 30% capacity, Powell down to a quarter. These aren't just reservoirs, they are the strategic water reserves for the entire American Southwest. And they are draining, but the damage you can see is only half the story. The real crisis is underground. Over the last 2 decades, the basin has lost a volume of groundwater almost equal to the entire capacity of Lake Mead. Think of it as a savings account built up over millennia now spent, and it's not being replenished. This is what desperation looks like on a spreadsheet before it looks like a headline. It looks like mandatory water cuts in Arizona and Nevada. It's the quiet, pragmatic decision to sacrifice agriculture to keep the lights on in Phoenix and Las Vegas. A superpower, methodically choosing which parts of its own economy to let wither. A problem of this magnitude, this foundational, can't stay a domestic issue forever. It was only a matter of time before the quiet desperation found a very loud voice. And that voice, when it came, wasn't a diplomat's whisper in a secure room. It was the sound of a microphone turning on at a press conference broadcast globally. In 2024, and then again with more force in 2025, Donald Trump took what had always been a fringe, almost theoretical policy debate, and he dragged it into the harsh light of day. For strategists and policymakers in Ottawa, this was the firing of a starting pistol. The decades of quiet, background anxiety about American water needs were over. The contest was now open. This didn't happen in a vacuum. You have to understand the context of the moment. The statement landed at a time when the U.S.-Canada relationship was already strained, defined by tense negotiations, tariff walls, and constant trade friction. So, when the topic of Canadian water was publicly raised, it wasn't interpreted as a simple inquiry. It was seen for what it was, a clear escalation, the opening of a new, far more sensitive front in an already difficult geopolitical test. By making the demand public, the White House fundamentally changed the nature of the game. Private negotiations can be managed, delayed, or reframed. A public declaration, however, is a point of no return. It forces the issue onto the national agenda and strips away any room for quiet diplomacy. It's designed to put the other side on the spot. The quiet academic question of water exports was now an official public challenge to Canadian resource sovereignty. It was no longer a question of if. It was a question of when and how much. The challenge was laid down, and it demanded an answer. The challenge from the White House was a public declaration designed to force a response. And that response came from Ottawa. It was immediate, it was absolute, and it was delivered with a quiet firmness that was, in its own way, more powerful than any angry speech could have been. Prime Minister Mark Carney didn't stage a dramatic, flag-waving press conference. There was no emotional appeal. The rebuttal was issued as a statement, its tone less like a negotiation and more like a correction of a fundamental error. As if clarifying a law of physics. In 20 Carney stated it unequivocally, Canadian fresh water is not for sale. Not now, not ever. And to understand just how final that statement was, you have to grasp the core of the conflict. This was never a trade dispute. For the American administration, water was a resource, a commodity, something to be quantified, priced, and transported to solve a problem. But that is simply not the lens through which Canada views its water. Because in Canada, water is not viewed as surplus. It is viewed as identity, and that distinction changes everything. It's not just rhetoric. This principle is woven into the country's legal fabric. Laws like the Great Lakes Protection Act were created specifically to prevent what was being demanded, the large-scale removal of water. Even the United States is party to this understanding through its own Great Lakes Compact, which prohibits diversions outside the basin. The Canadian no wasn't just a political position, it was a legal wall. So the line was drawn, a clear, principled stand backed by law. You might think that's the end of it, but it's not. This is where the real strategic danger begins. The true risk was never about selling the water itself. It was about being forced to say no in the first place. Because in the world of geopolitics, the moment you are forced to publicly defend something you consider non-negotiable, you have already conceded that it is, in fact, negotiable. You may have won the argument, but you've lost something far more valuable, the assumption that your sovereignty in that area was ever absolute, and that creates a precedent. A door that, once shown to exist, can never truly be locked again. That unlocked door leads to a simple structural reality. Infrastructure is permanent, and permanent infrastructure is permanent leverage. The core of Canada's strategic anxiety has little to do with the price of a cubic meter of water. It is focused entirely on the irreversible physical commitment that a pipeline or canal represents. A commitment that outlasts any government, any trade agreement, and any promise. To understand this fear, we don't need to look at hypothetical water projects. We only need to look at a bridge, the Gordie Howe International Bridge between Windsor and Detroit. On paper, a model of cooperation. In financial reality, Canada is paying for the entire thing, the whole $4 billion based on the logic that ensuring the flow of trade was in our national interest. But as the bridge neared its 2026 opening, a problem emerged. The Trump administration, seeing a fully funded Canadian asset about to connect to its soil, threatened to block it unless Canada made concessions on other issues. The cooperative project was instantly turned into a hostage. This is the dynamic in miniature. A partner project becomes a point of leverage. The physical asset itself becomes the tool of coercion. The trap is that you pay to build your own cage. This pattern is precisely why the phrase large-scale water diversions triggers a deep institutional fear in Ottawa. It's not paranoia, it's pattern recognition. And that pattern has a name, the North American Water and Power Alliance, or NAWAPA. This wasn't a fringe proposal. It was a formal plan from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers in the 1960s, a truly colossal undertaking involving 369 separate projects designed to reroute 158 million acre-feet of water every year from rivers in Canada and Alaska, channeling it south to a thirsty United States. NAWAPA was never built. But the blueprint, the strategic concept, never went away. It remains a recurring ghost in the machine of continental resource planning, proof that the idea is not new and not unthinkable. So the pattern is clear. The Gordie Howe Bridge shows us the how, the way cooperation is converted into coercion. NAWAPA shows us the what, the ultimate scale of that ambition when applied to water. This is why any talk of a water deal is a non-starter. It is viewed as an annexation of sovereignty by plumbing. Once the concrete is poured, the argument is over. Forever. We've looked at the public standoffs, the official statements, the billion-dollar infrastructure plays, and the ghosts of mega projects past. It's easy to think this is where the conflict lies, but these are just the surface tremors. The real battle for Canada's water isn't happening in press conferences or in engineering blueprints. It's a quieter, more insidious conflict, and it's one Canada might be losing without even realizing a fight has begun. That quiet conflict is a shadow war. It's fought not with pipelines, but with lawyers. Not on the border, but in the fine print of treaties. The public obsession with a direct physical clash over water is a strategic distraction. The real battle is far more insidious. It employs a tactic known as salami-slicing, eroding Canadian control over its resources incrementally, slice by slice, using the very legal and economic frameworks designed to foster cooperation. Each action is calculated to be small enough on its own, not to trigger an overt confrontation, but collectively, they achieve a strategic goal without firing a shot. This is how long-term control quietly slips away. Pause here, because salami slicing isn't just a clever strategic term. It's the mechanism that could dismantle Canadian sovereignty without a single pipeline ever being built. And it's happening right now, hidden in the fine print of two agreements, but not like this. First, consider the Columbia River Treaty. In March 2025, just as the Trump administration was escalating trade war threats against Canada, the U.S. explicitly paused negotiations on this crucial water agreement. The timing was not a coincidence. It was leverage. Second, around the same period, contemporaneous reports detailed how U.S. officials were exploring ways to use tariffs and the CUSMA trade pact as pressure tools if Canada resisted demands on Great Lakes water. The message was clear. Your economic stability is now linked to our resource needs. This isn't a hypothetical scenario. It is the playbook, weaponizing economic interdependence to gain leverage over a physical resource. It is the quiet, real-world manifestation of sovereignty eroding, not through a dramatic invasion, but through the slow, methodical pressure of treaty clauses and trade threats. The idea of a water war is dramatic, but is the real threat quieter? Which do you believe is the greater risk to Canada's long-term sovereignty, an open demand for water, or the slow erosion of control through trade and treaty pressure? Share your strategic assessment in the comments. But this shadow war over Canadian water is not happening in a vacuum. It is a preview, a test case. Because what happens when the logic of survival in one nation begins to systematically dismantle the sovereignty of its closest ally? It sets a new, dangerous precedent for a world entering an era of unprecedented resource scarcity. That dangerous precedent isn't a future hypothetical. It is the current global reality, and the data is unambiguous. The term water wars has long been dismissed as speculative. That time has passed. The phrase is now appearing in policy discussions, academic research, and strategic planning documents precisely because the facts on the ground have changed. First, consider the numbers from the Pacific Institute. In 2022, there were 235 water-related violent conflicts recorded globally. By 2024, that number had reached nearly 420. This is not a gradual trend. It is a near doubling in just 2 years. We are witnessing a vertical escalation. Second, this is not an abstract threat. This is the reality behind growing tensions over the Nile River between Egypt and Ethiopia, and the decades-long strategic standoff over the Indus River between India and Pakistan. This is the global tinderbox. This context is critical because it confirms the U.S.-Canada situation is not an isolated event. It is a bellwether for a new era of resource geopolitics. In fact, it's the defining test case for how these conflicts will play out between developed, allied nations. Therefore, Canada's hardline stance on its water resources becomes something more than a simple defense of national sovereignty. It becomes a critical precedent being set on the world stage. It is an answer being forged in real time to the question of how resource-rich nations can and should respond to scarcity-driven pressure. But a precedent is not a complete strategy. With the global stakes this high, how does a nation methodically defend itself? How do you build a strategic shield that can actually withstand the sheer force of a neighbor's survival logic? The answer involves a set of deliberate, interlocking policy designs we are about to explore. Those interlocking policy designs begin with a fundamental shift in posture. Faced with this relentless external pressure, Canada is not just saying no anymore. It's starting to build a shield. This represents a deliberate evolution from a reactive stance to a proactive one. The goal is no longer simply to defend against individual, legal, or commercial challenges, but to architect the very terms of engagement for the future. The cornerstone of this shield was formally laid in March 2026. This is when the Government of Canada, through its Canada Water Agency, began the official development of a national water security strategy, a framework specifically designed to address geopolitical freshwater threats. Now, a national water security strategy can sound like another document destined for a shelf. It is not. This is the architectural drawing for 21st century Canadian sovereignty. It's the institutional shield being forged to fight the quiet war. Understanding its function is to understand how Canada intends to hold the line. This strategic shift isn't happening in a vacuum. It's a direct and logical response to American projections of widespread basin-level water shortages by 2050, with supply reductions of up to 1/3 in many regions. When your neighbor's well is projected to run dry, you don't just lock your own, you build a coherent system to manage it for the long term. And that is the core of this strategy. It's about converting a perceived vulnerability, our vast decentralized federation, into structured diplomatic leverage. It does this by institutionalizing water governance as a core pillar of national security, creating a single integrated framework that coordinates federal, provincial, and indigenous authority. For the first time, this process ensures that when Canada speaks on water, it speaks with one legally coherent voice. This is a tested Canadian reflex. Past existential threats like the NAWAPA proposals serve to reinforce and solidify Canada's water as identity stance, proving that external pressure can forge internal strategic cohesion. This is the empowering resolution. Canada is not a victim in this equation. It is adapting. It is building its shield, and it is preparing for the new reality of 21st century geopolitics. With this shield now being forged, the relationship between Canada and the United States over water enters a new permanent state of strategic reality. The old assumptions are gone. The long, quiet negotiation has just been given its formal rules of engagement. So what does this new reality look like? It isn't a crisis that will simply pass. It is a permanent change in the geopolitical climate between our two countries. The core conflict is now a structural feature of the relationship. America's existential need for water, driven by undeniable scarcity, colliding with Canada's foundational identity, which refuses to see that water as a line item in a trade deal. There is no simple policy fix for this. No single agreement can resolve a tension this fundamental. This means the era of taking our water sovereignty for granted is definitively over. The quiet, passive assumption of control has been replaced by the necessity of active, sustained, and strategic vigilance. This story, this quiet negotiation, doesn't have an ending. We are simply at the beginning of a new chapter, one that will be written for decades to come. If you believe that understanding these quiet, powerful forces is essential for navigating the future, then subscribe. Join the analysis because the long watch has just begun.